Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I'm talking about the sixth album by Squarepusher entitled Do You Know Squarepusher? This is part of my series into Tom Jenkinson's discography, and you can find links to more of those videos in the description below. As always, don't come into this expecting an unbiased review, just the thoughts and opinions of someone who's been a fan of Tom Jenkinson's music for some 25 years. If you're a fellow fan, then hopefully you can share that enjoyment with me here. And if you're new to his music and you want to find out a bit more about what it's all about, then you've also come to the right place. So let's get into it. Do You Know Squarepusher was the sixth album by Tom Jenkinson, released on his longtime home, Warp Records, in 2002, following Go Plastic, which was released the previous year, which I've covered at length in another video, link in the description below if you want to check that out. The disc was also accompanied by a bonus live disc called Alive in Japan, which featured several tracks from Go Plastic and some from this album performed live in Tokyo. Now, for the main studio album itself, Do You Know Squarepusher is Squarepusher's shortest LP at just 7 tracks and 37 minutes, and I wouldn't really count it as a double album since the live album just contains previously released material. And in my view, it is probably the first album in his discography which didn't feel like a true step forward or evolution of his sound. But given his groundbreaking run of releases from the mid-90s to the early noughties, we can forgive one small misstep. For starters, it's quite scant on material at just 37 minutes and 7 tracks, and more than 10 minutes of that is given over to a Mutilation Colony, an experimental ambient piece, which I will talk more about in a minute. There is also a short interlude, which essentially serves as the introduction to Mutilation Colony, and then the closing track on the album is a cover of Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart. Yes, that Joy Division. So that really just leaves 4 tracks, which to be honest would have worked much better as a 4-track EP. Then there's the live disc, which to be honest I've probably listened to a handful of times. To be honest, I've never truly understood the appeal of live albums unless the performance is radically different from the recorded versions, which I don't think these are really, or if it was a gig that you're actually present at. Otherwise, why would I really want to listen to lower quality versions of the same tracks with crowd noise in the background? But that is just my opinion. But anyway, let's get into the details. And even though I did say Do You Know Squarepusher is not a true evolution of Squarepusher's sound, there are 4 really solid tracks here, and some of them do move in quite a different direction than anywhere he'd gone before. For someone who comes across as a deeply sincere and thoughtful artist, Squarepusher's proclamation of himself as the daddy comes across as a little bit jarring. What seemingly started out as a bit of a joke on Come On My Selector, with the deafening roar towards the track's climax of I'm the fucking daddy, to the blink and you'll miss it, Squarepusher's the fucking daddy on My Fucking Sound, has now at this point in 2002 become an unself-conscious act of self-mythology, as the title track opens with a voice asking, who do you think's the daddy then? The answer being, of course, Squarepusher, who makes all the different styles of drum and bass. Like on My Red Hot Car, maybe he was leaning into the machismo of UK garage, a style from which he incorporates many elements, as well as parodying somewhat. This track, Do You Know Squarepusher, is a glitchy, spacey beat workout, which, while heavily indebted to UKG, could also be classed as future garage if it wasn't 10 years too early. It's definitely decent enough and sounds very early noughties, with that kind of glitchy, crunchy treatment of the beats and the spacey synth, which almost has a hint of Timbaland style R&B about it, maybe. Up next, F Train is a less fully realised precursor to 50 Cycles, which would appear on Ultravisitor. Jenkinson's voice seemingly narrates snatches from a dystopian sci-fi essay. Phrases such as access discrepancy indicates hexagons beyond control anomaly emerge in his pitched down estuary grumble as ricocheting beats and glitches rebound almost painfully across the soundstage. The austere sci-fi construction feels like more than a nod to Autechre, although to be fair, it is a sound that they pull off much more effectively. Kill Robot is also very Autechre in its cold and metallic sound design and the way the rhythm arrives unpredictably and seems to emerge from the tangle of clangs and bleeps like some kind of chaotic butterfly effect. From this vantage point, I'd almost say it's the strongest track on the album, as it is the most successful experiment Jenkinson pulls off here and is pretty different to anything he'd done before, or since really. Now, if you'd asked me back in the day what my favourite track on Do You Know Squarepusher was, I would have easily said Anstrom Fec 4, which is the closest in sound to Go Plastic, although it eschews the experimental freeform jazz sensibility behind the album and favours instead a more straight up verse chorus structure. The result is a kind of chip tune drum and bass, but ramped up to about 200 BPM, absolutely hyper as fuck and incredibly good fun to listen to. Mutilation Colony, which I mentioned before, is an experimental piece of sound design, I guess you call it. It feels too linear to really be considered ambient, not to mention the mood is unsettling and the tonality is abrasive. Again, it's not really like anything he'd done before, although you could say the seeds were sown in the track Meteng Excuse V1.2 off Go Plastic, which contains many similar textures. I can see how Mutilation Colony would work accompanied by some visuals, as it is very much like a narrative, albeit in the same vein as the oblique sci-fi of F-Train. It was never a track I really played very much back in the day, and even listening to it quite a few times in preparation for making this video, there's something about it which just doesn't really click with me. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be an avenue of exploration that Tom Jenkinson was interested in too much either, as he's never really returned to this sound. The Joy Division cover is much more faithful to the original than you might expect a Squarepusher cover to be. He certainly doesn't transform it into a psychotic drill and bass rave up. Love Will Tear Us Apart is such an iconic track. It is a brave choice for a cover, and Jenkinson is smart enough not to think he can elevate the track, but then neither does he truly make it his own. Was it just a way of highlighting some more of his influences, or maybe just proving to himself and the world that he can do straight up post-punk? I don't know. It closes the album out with some much needed human warmth after the sterile Mutilation Colony, but it is also so incongruous it just feels a bit odd. As a whole, Do You Know Squarepusher lacks the consistency and depth of material to truly match up to his prior releases. And there's a real feeling that there was no overarching vision for the album, given it contains tongue-in-cheek constructions of UK garage, the soundtrack to an alien apocalypse, and a cover of a classic post-punk anthem. But maybe that's what he was getting at by calling the album Do You Know Squarepusher? No, maybe we don't really. Obviously, given this is Squarepusher we're talking about, the good stuff here is really good if you dig experimental electronic music, which I'm sure you do, and you're never going to have a bad time if you stick on Anstrom Fec 4, unless you're trying to get some sleep. But for such a forward-thinking and visionary artist, it does feel a little bit cobbled together. An awkward small sidestep between two of his greatest works, Go Plastic and Autechre-inspired. Anyway, of course, this is all just my opinion. If you disagree, please let me know in the comments. And if you're still watching at this point, please like the video and please check out my channel for more of the same. Otherwise, that's it from me. Goodbye.